I never imagined a medieval duel could unlock a hidden story of courage and sacrifice. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun hung low, staining the arena with a blood-red glow. The air buzzed with tension and the acrid smell of sweat. My heart pounded like war drums in my chest, each beat more frantic than the last. There I was, caught in the midst of a crowd that swelled with excitement and dread. Whispers twirled around me like ghostly fingers. They were all here for blood. Not just any blood. They wanted the story, the tale of honor, valor, treachery. And I had the worst seat, a view of the makeshift stage where destinies would collide. The duelists stood across from one another, eyes locked in an unyielding stare. They were stark opposites, one, a towering brute clad in armor that glinted under the dying light, the other, a lean figure wrapped in tattered rags. I could barely breathe. My fingers trembled on the rough wood of the railing. This was more than a fight. It was a clashing of two worlds. What I didn't know then was that this duel would reveal the very fibers of our existence. I only thought of my brother, a warrior lost in the chaos of war, desperate to find a way back to us. My mother's tears haunted me. I wiped away my own, furious they dared fall, but they were there. As the clang of swords filled the air, the crowd roared, deafening, like a wild beast unleashed. Eyes wide, I watched as they danced on the edge of violence. Every slice and parry echoed in my chest, the raw spectacle seducing me, even as my stomach twisted with fear. What secrets would unfold beneath the mask of combat? Suddenly, a loud gasp rippled through the crowd. The armored brute staggered, blood painting his once glorious shield. Silence settled in like a shroud. My heart raced. What was happening? Something shifted in the air, a promise, perhaps? Could victory come at such a terrible cost? Amidst the chaos, I noticed a flicker of recognition in the lean fighter's eyes. They were no stranger to each other. Memories danced behind those fierce glances. I leaned closer, straining to catch fragments of their unspoken history. My heart sank. What tale would spill from this brutal intersection of fate? Then, to my astonishment, the crowd erupted again, their words blurring into a tide of confusion and awe. I felt a knot tighten in my throat. I knew something was about to unravel, something big. But what? As I braced myself for the final clash, a chilling truth seeped into my bones. I had stumbled into an ancient story woven with threads of sacrifice and courage, stretching far beyond this duel. And I was right in the middle of it. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The ringing clang of metal against metal fell silent, as if the arena itself held its breath for an eternity. The armored giant, staggered yet standing, seemed to blend with the twilight. The air crackled with uncertainty, and the lean fighter's gaze held something deeper, an ingrained familiarity that twisted my stomach in knots. A whisper, barely audible, floated through the tension-laden crowd. Do you see it? They know each other. My heart twisted at the realization. This was more than just an encounter, a kinship bound by shared trials and unfulfilled promises threaded through those locked eyes. As I struggled to piece together this unexpected bond, the unexpected weight of their history crushed down on me, thickening the air that surrounded us. The duel resumed, each clash of swords ringing louder than before. The brute, fueled by rage and pain, attacked with fervor. The lean fighter, agile and swift, was the embodiment of desperation. Every blow exchanged seemed to echo the memories of heartache and countless battles fought long before we had arrived at this impasse. A gnarl of rage twisted within me, desperate to piece together this shattered narrative. I had come here for escape, to wrestle with my own grief regarding my lost Brothera hero in my heart, forever adorned in the glories of his past. But now I stood at the crest of revelation, buried under the weight of unknown revelations. How was I tangled into this? A moment of grace emerged. As the brute swung wildly, the lean fighter caught the end of the sword, guiding it away. Instead of delivering a fatal blow, they shifted back, offering a moment of hesitation that rippled through the crowd. For a heartbeat, it was not a battle of savagery but a language of understanding. Then their eyes met again, and my heart clenched. It was as if they were throwing words cloaked in silence, pleas for mercy or perhaps an unquenchable thirst for justice. The lean fighter, shrouded in rags, looked years older than I imagined, his scars delicately etched across his skeena roadmap of survival. Yet, within him flickered a spirit I recognized, a flicker that spoke of fight, betrayal, and hope. The crowd snapped back to life as the duel reached a fever pitch. I caught sight of a woman near me, her hands stained with soil, her worn eyes fixed on the stage. There was a tenderness to her. She reached out, gripping the arm of a boy beside her, sharing a moment of warmth amidst the chaos. I realized that everywhere, there whispered currents of humanity buried within turmoil. Despite the violence, connection emerged in small gestures, a shared glance of understanding, an offered hand, an unspoken thread binding the spectators just as thickly as the fighters on stage. Suddenly, a shriek cut through the air. My attention snapped back to the fighters. The lean fighter had momentarily launched himself over the brute, landing with surprising grace. I could feel the tension rise, a palpable fear hanging heavy in the hearts around me. Would this be the defining moment, the tipping point where memories collide and destinies splinter? As I braced myself for the culmination of their struggle, my thoughts raced back to my brother. He had once told me tales of valor, how warriors were defined not just by their prowess in battle but by the choices they made in moments of stillness. And here, in a face-off stained by history, the choice of brutality or honor flickered almost imperceptibly. The lean fighter stumbled backward, nearly losing his footing. In that instant, a flicker of vulnerability crossed his fierce demeanor, and amidst the clamor, I could almost hear the words forming in his heart, the cries of those he had fought for, the echo of betrayal he faced, perhaps even the hope to reshape it all, to forge a legacy anew. But before I could process the gravity of their conflict, the brute charged forward once more, wild and reckless. This clash was spiraling out of control, and I felt my breath quicken, every agonizing gasp as momentous as what unfolded before me. Then, it happened. As steel scraped against steel, a voice rang out from the crowd, "Stop. You have to listen." It was the child beside the woman, the same one she had clasped in her warm grip moments before. The boldness of his words boomed through the air, laced with a purity that caught everyone off guard. In that moment of innocence, the arena spiraled into silence once more, a hopeful heartbeat punctuating the heaviness that had cloaked the chaos. But the adult world was not so easily swayed, and as I absorbed the shock of the boy's declaration, a realization struck me cold. Hope often lies in the most unexpected places. But the price of honesty had its own repercussions both for the boy and for the fighters. Before us.as the crowd stirred with confusion, I was gripped by a new uncertainty. Would this brave interruption light a new flame, or extinguish the souls entwined in the turmoil of this ancient conflict? The silence that followed the child's plea felt fragile, as if we were all balancing on the precipice of something monumental. The armored giant halted mid-strike, and for the briefest of moments, it seemed the world paused to consider the weight of a child's heart. Each breath was shared among those gathered, a collective suspended in disbelief, cliffs of expectation hanging in the air. The lean fighter, panting deeply, eyes wide with surprise, slowly lowered his weapon. He glanced at the boy, an eerie mix of amusement and bewilderment flickering across his face. I thought him unrecognizable for a heartbeat. He, who had once seemed invincible, now appeared just as human as the child whose voice quaked like a fragile lily in the tempest. Then, moments stretched like an elastic band, and the tension slowly morphed into curiosity. The spectators leaned forward as if compelled to witness this shift, a fragile truce held aloft by innocence. I felt myself hoping against the odds that this boy, with the audacity to speak into the chaos, might steer destiny's course. "Why are you fighting?" the child asked, his voice ringing clear and strong amid the arena. "Can't you see that you're hurting? That the more you swing your sword, the more pain is created?" A collective sigh swelled, blending itself into a soft murmur of agreement from the crowd. Who were we, caged in our own stories of suffering, to ignore the truth veiled within such innocent wisdom? And yet, a deep-seated skepticism lurked at the edges of my heart. Would the fighters comprehend the gravity of a child's words, or would their histories and the burdens of war silence any possibility of understanding? The woman beside me squeezed her son's shoulder, her expression something close to hope tempered with anxiety. It was clear she wished to shield him from the brutality of the world, to armor him with the knowledge that the worst of humanity need not define his path. As the two warriors faced each other, the question hung thick in the air, a charged moment caught between a memory of friendship and a history clouded in anger. The lean fighter finally lifted his chin, and though words spilled effortlessly from his lips, they carried the weight of his scars. "That I fight not for the bloodlust, but for the memory of those I lost," he shouted, his voice infused with raw emotion, resonating with the crowd, "for the hope that perhaps tomorrow can be better." "But violence," he faltered, gazing at the boy with softened eyes, "it drowns out those wishes." The brute, still poised to strike, seemed stymied by the words that hung bitterly between them. An agonizing silence fell, heavy with unanswered questions. I watched the giant's clenched fists gradually relax, his breaths grew less labored as if the burden of fighting weighed too heavy on his broad shoulders. "Memory can become a cage," he finally spoke, a tremor threading through his timbre. "I am ensnared by it, chained to the shadows of my past." The little boy, still full of wide-eyed innocence, took a shaky step forward, his small body glowing like a beacon in a storm. "But if you keep fighting without hearing one another, you'll only get lost in those shadows. Please choose not to be enemies." The words struck like a match-igniting tinder, and I felt an unexpected warmth bloom within the crowd. Flickers of empathy stirred among the spectators, moments shared, people forced through trials of their own. I thought of my brother and the restless void his absence left behind. The tether of pain had twisted around my heart, but now, as the truth of the child's plea resonated, I felt a fragile thread of hope weaving through my grief. As if on cue, someone in the crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then a wave of applause surged. Each clap an echo of yearning for resolution, not through violence, but through understanding. It was our collective heartbeat yearning for salvation from despair, a reckoning echoing through the ages. Yet, in that swell of humanity, a darker shadow loomed. A new figure emerged from the fringe of the gathering, a cloaked commandant with eyes as cold as frost-covered steel, and I felt an icy knot creep within me. He bore the heraldry of an old Rivala sworn enemy known for only one language: destruction. It seemed, unbeknownst to the fighters, who teetered on the brink of understanding, the past threatened to pull them back into its orbit of fury. The sudden tension shifted again in the arena, shifting from possibility to an impending storm. As the commandant stepped forward, ire lacing his lips, he spat venomous words: "Enough of this folly. You speak of harmony, yet you each bear secrets crafted in betrayal. This is not a time for reconciliation. This is a time for blood debts to be settled." Shock reverberated through the arena. My heart thundered with the knowledge that hope was but a flicker, on the verge of extinguishment. As eyes now flicked between the commandant and the fighters, I understood with each revelation, there existed a reckoning, a challenge, and the remnants of shattered pasts yearning for closure. Would the fragile peace forged by a child's plea hold? Or would history's weight anchor them down into the depths of despair? As I stood there, clenching my fists, hope colliding with dread, I realized it all depended upon the choices that lay ahead, choices that had begun with two warriors, echoing the silent sacrifices made by so many and unknowingly, perhaps choosing me to become part of this untold story crafted by courage and sacrifice. As the commandant's icy words echoed in the vast arena, a chill settled over us like a dense fog. I looked around, half expecting the crowd to scatter in panic, but instead, there was an unusual stillness, a group taking a collective breath before plunging into the depths of a churning sea. The lean fighter's brow furrowed deeply, caught between the fear of a past that wouldn't let him go and a glimmer of hope for a future that whispered of healing. I could see the turmoil dancing in his eyes, wrestling against the instinct to protect what remained of his shattered world. The boy, oblivious to the powerful storm brewing, stood resolute, the embodiment of courage in his small stature. "Listen to the boy," someone shouted from the back, and the crowd stirred, their faces flickering between doubt and belief. Hope began to spark again, igniting voices that had long been silenced beneath the weight of grudges and revenge. Whispers turned to fervent calls for listening, for understanding. But the commandant merely sneered at the growing tide of dissent. "You think you can build something out of these ruins?" His laughter, cold and cynical, sent shivers down my spine. "You're all fools to believe that after all this bloodshed, a child's words can change destiny." Yet in that moment, as I watched the boy hold his ground against the towering shadows of fear and anger, I understood sometimes the voice of a child resonates louder than the bombast of any adult. It isn't the blood on one's hands that defines existence, but rather the choice to bridge or sever the connections we share. "Then let it be known," the brute finally replied, his voice steady, "that I do not wish to revisit the graveyards of my past if they are to be filled with more violence." With a flash of fragile vulnerability, the warrior's gaze turned earnest as it met the child's steadfast eyes. "Is there truly another way to honor the fallen?" The commandant's face darkened, enraged by this shift of power in the arena, a shift he had not anticipated. "You will regret this weakness. You have not only squandered the blood of the past but will spill more for a mere child's fantasy of peace." The tension was unbearable, the weight of every life lost hung like a pendulum. At that moment, as if summoned by fate, a woman from the edge of the crowd stepped forward. She was older, her face lined with the map of struggles, and she bearing a small woven basket filled with coarse bread, exchanging disbelief for kindness. "What do we have to lose?" she called, her voice wavering yet strong. "We've lost so much already, let us try. Even a single act of kindness can change the course of history." Her words struck like a bell, reverberating through the heart of the crowd. With trembling hands, she extended the bread toward the fighters. "Share a meal, for even the most hardened warriors can find solace over food." It wasn't much, a modest gesture amid the chaos, but I felt its weight, far greater than any weapon. The lean fighter, blinking in disbelief, reached for the bread, and the brute followed suit, albeit hesitantly. They shared not just in the food but in an understanding knitted together by the threads of pain, suffering, and the longing for something more than revenge. The commandant gaped, clearly struggling with the disorientation of humanity creeping back into the arena. "No! This is absurd," he barked, his eyes aflame with displeasure, yet the murmuring voices of the crowd were growing stronger, pushing against the storm his presence brought. "Even in battle, they fought for something greater," another voice broke through the noise. "They fought to protect the ones they love. If they can remember that, perhaps we all can." Each word seemed to build a bridge across the chasm of past betrayals. Nothing had been resolved, but layers of connection were being forged anew. As the fighters hesitated, I felt a pull within me, a yearning to speak, to lend my voice to this evolving tapestry of hope and clarity. "Free yourselves from the grasp of the past," I spoke aloud, feeling the intensity of eyes upon me. "Remember why you fight and ask yourselves, is this who you want to be? There is no honor in becoming the very monsters we seek to defeat." The crowd murmured in agreement, hearts beginning to align despite their past scars. The commandant, realizing his grip on their narrative was loosening, took a step forward, face drawn tight with fury. "Fools! You will pay the price of betrayal." But before he could finish, an unexpected shout pierced the air, reverberating with alarming urgency. "They're coming!" A distressed voice rang out, and all heads turned to see a group of armed figures advancing through the throng, faces obscured beneath dark hoods. The shift in energy was palpable, hope mingled with dread as people turned to one another, panic creeping in. The warriors, still standing in their newfound camaraderie, prepared for a fight, but the energy held something different, maybe unity against the true threat that loomed. My heart raced, and I glimpsed shattered connections forming anew as the richness of humanity unfolded even in the darkest hour. Together, we could rise to meet what awaited, but how? The arena stood imprinted in my mind, a spider's web delicate and complex, holding fragile possibilities, now threatened to unravel. As I surveyed the commotion, a chilling realization dawned upon me in the chaos, for everything that had been built upon the child's plea, real change never came easily. It had merely begun. The true test awaited in the face of adversity, and all choices made from now could tip the scales. As I watched the figures approach, it became apparent that they weren't here to make peace. They were harbingers of destruction, and the price of our shared humanity now stood on the precipice of annihilation. The dust hung heavy in the air, swirling like spectral memories, catching the light in fleeting moments of beauty against the backdrop of dread. The crowd's hope and fear intertwined as they gazed down the arena, where the shadows loomed nearer, each step a harbinger of impending chaos. I felt my insides twist, a knot of worry coiling tighter as the armed figures, so cloaked in darkness, advanced, their intentions unmistakably malicious. "Stand firm," the lean fighter shouted, his voice laced with newfound strength. "We will not yield to fear." His words ignited a flicker of resolve among the crowd, and as if sensing the shift, the boy stepped forward beside him, his small form unwavering. "We stand together. They may come with weapons, but we have our hearts." A ripple of gasps cascaded through the throng, but I marveled at the courage radiating from that child, illuminating the darkest corners of uncertainty. But it was the commandant's snarl that cut through the air like a blade. "You think banding together makes you stronger?" He swept his arm toward the approaching figures. More meat for the slaughter. The dark-clad intruders didn't just walk, they flowed, an ominous current emanating from a single sinister intent. I scanned their faces, hoping for a hint of mercy, but they were shrouded in grim determination, eyes cold as stone. It was the first time I truly chastised myself for the naive hope I had placed in the chance for change. Were we really prepared for what lay ahead? Then, just as the unease reached a crescendo, a voice broke through the tension, an unexpected melody that clung to the air like a whisper of promise. "To arms! To arms!" A man on horseback, drumming spurs into the ground, rallied from the rear. Clad in weathered armor, he charged forth, a glimmering beacon of hope against the oncoming tide. The sudden shift caught me off guard. His presence provided a breath of fresh air, yet with it came a renewed weight, the realization that the people's vigilance was their only salvation. Would they rise to the challenge he presented? Would they dare to follow him? I yelled instinctively, daring to hope my voice would spur them into action. As if summoning something deeper within, members of the crowd joined the man on horseback, forming a fraying line, uncertain yet resolute against the encroaching darkness. The lead intruder growled with disdain, his sneer churning like rancid vinegar. "You think mere words and courage will thwart us?" With that, he brandished his gleaming sword, the sunlight catching the edge in a deadly arc. But before the first clash of steel and flesh could echo, another unforeseen moment of kindness emerged from within the chaos. A young woman, clutching a tattered banner in her shaking hands, raced to the forefront, her face determined. "We fight for love. For the lives that have been lost. And for the futures we can save." As she spoke, others rallied behind her, hearts joining in frail harmony, giving form to hope. "Shield your hearts!" I bellowed, feeling the urgency wash over me as fear turned to bravery. "What we hold dear cannot be snatched away in darkness if we stand together." Every word felt like a fragile lifeline flung into a tumultuous sea. But the commandant's stormy countenance grew more tumultuous, his eyes darted across the crowd, seeking weak points, always ready to brandish the most devastating attacks. "Fools!" he screeched, "you think sacrifice will bring peace?" In a dervish of movement and fire, the first blow fell, steel clashing against steel as combat erupted in the arena, dragging us all into a primordial struggle. I felt the call to fight, but deeper than that, a primal need to hold the threads of humanity even in this mess of violence, to kindle warmth where there should only be cold. The lean fighter found himself grappling with one of the dark figures, fury and pain etched into every line of his face. Meanwhile, the boy, small but fierce, bolted toward us, eyes wide with fear yet filled with steely determination. "What do we do? What do we do?" he cried, and I felt the weight of every unfulfilled promise pool in my heart, yet amidst the chaos, a flash of silver caught my eye. An object lay forgotten, dulled by the debris of earlier hope. I lunged toward it, grasping the warm hilt of a sword, a spirit of defiance worn down by sorrow. In that moment, an echo of resolve channeled through me, reminding me of the strength laying dormant within those willing to fight for love, to protect this precious sliver of unity wrought from anguish. But just as I grasped it, the crowd's fervor surged, yet at the apex of our united cry a sickening realization twisted in my gut, clawing at reason. In the frenetic whirl of bodies and clashing noises, I recognized one hooded figure, and terror gripped me like icy steel. Someone from my past had returned, and with them, their desire for vengeance burned hotter than the flames of war surrounding us. The sword felt heavy in my hand, its significance twisting with memories long buried. The unraveling tapestry reached toward the horizon, and the ominous specter of tragedy lurked, threatening to consume all that we had fought to build. With that dark revelation crystallizing in my mind, the battle erupted fully into its brutal reality, and hope faltered, teetering on the edge of what it meant to sacrifice. As I took my place in the fray, it was clear our greatest test lay not just in facing the threat posed by our enemies, but in reconciling the ghosts of the past that lived within us all. As the clamor of battle enveloped the arena, I felt the weight of the sword in my hand, a stark reminder of both resolve and fear. My pulse quickened with every clash of steel, every desperate yell, yet within that chaos, I remained rooted, frozen by the identity of the hooded figure stepping forward from the shadows. Their nearness was a ghost from a life I had thought long buried, but there they stood, eyes glinting with dark ambition and seeking vengeance. "Why did you return?" I murmured, more to myself than to them, but it was lost in the cacophony of war. Memories flooded through me, a tapestry of betrayal and heartbreak I had tried to forget, woven with laughter that had turned to screams. They rushed toward me, weapon poised and intent clear. Their hunger for retribution was palpable, that I fought to push back the flickering fear, channeling all my energy into the present moment. There was no room for hesitation. The battle was not merely against those who sought to conquer us, but also against the ghosts that threatened to pull me beneath the surface. People were depending on Meth-Lean Fighter, the boy, the young woman with the tattered banner, each of them fighting alongside me, their hope intermingled with mine. With a defiant roar, I plunged into the fray, confronting the hooded figure with the depth of my emotions as my sword met theirs. "You don't have to do this," I pleaded, a shred of my former connection with them surfacing. "There is still time to turn back." Their laugh was chilling, an echo infused with pain. "Time? Time left me behind the moment you chose your path. Now, I make my own." The word stung deeper than any blade could. Around us, the crowd surged with a fierce unity, emboldened by the newly kindled hope, a radiant wave crashing against the undercurrents of despair. The young woman's voice rang out, "For our loved ones. For our future." Her unwavering spirit inspired even the most hesitant villagers to take up arms, redoubling the force we presented against the dark tide. Yet, no matter how many I fought alongside, the shadows from my past loomed ever larger. The haunting visage of my adversary circled me, an unyielding reminder that revenge breeds a hunger that consumes everything in its path, including the very essence of who we once were. Each glance into their steely eyes revealed a reflection of catastrophe, an abyss I dared not let myself fall into. The battle raged on, but I was consumed by my inner turmoil. As the sword clashed against theirs, I felt not only the physical strain but an emotional fracture, a split between the person I had become in this moment of hope and the fears that haunted my past. Each strike bared the scars I carried, and beneath the surface of anger and despair lay the true battle, a struggle for forgiveness, for my own acceptance of the path that had led to this confrontation. In a chaotic whirl, glancing at the boy leading the resurgency, a tiny warrior in the symphony of clashing swords, I was overwhelmed by a spark of courage. Perhaps hope was not just about banishing darkness, but also about reconciling the deep-rooted fears that reared their heads in hostile times. We had each faced our own demons. Perhaps it was time to confront mine. With renewed determination, I pressed forward, refusing to yield another inch to the shadows. "We can find peace," I shouted, words spilling out between breaths and blows. "Do not let this cycle continue, this pain, this hatred. We can forge a different path together." But my opponent only shifted, growing more hostile, more relentless. Your idealism is pathetic, it weakens you. This world deserves to burn, only through ash can the strong rise. The fervor in their voice was twisted, reminiscent of old grievances. Maybe it's time you let that go, I replied, feeling my own voice steady in the chaos. I won't be your scapegoat. Just as our blades met once more, a piercing scream cut through the tumult, a cry of desperation suffocated by the urge to keep fighting. My heart sank as I heard it again, clearer now, calling out through the shouts, "Mom! Mom!" My head whipped toward the crowd. Amongst the fray, I caught sight of the boy, innocent, steadfast yet trembling, suddenly faltering as the chaos encroached upon him. The moment halted like a frozen canvas where everything hung in the balance. "No!" The word ruptured from my lips as I instinctively darted towards him, shockwaves of terror racing through me. I had promised to protect them all, but before I could reach his side, a dark figure loomed, casting a long shadow over my path. In that heartbeat, everything shifted. The weight of my past and the burden of my present collided, creating a fractal of irrevocable dread. The boy's gaze met mine, filled with both faith and fear as the enemy closed in. I had to choose then and there: was I strong enough to fight for all that mattered, or would I let the tides of fate drown my hope? As the shadows descended, the arena pulsed with the echo of unyielding determination and enduring sacrifice, and for that brief moment, raw uncertainty wrapped itself around us, ensnaring my thoughts, binding us all to the precipice of what was yet to come. My heart raced as I plunged forward, the chaos of the battle fading into a muted hum, overtaken by the focused beat of my pulse. The sight of the young boy reminded me of my own lost innocence, the days when the world felt simple, unafraid, and full of promise. Each step felt impossibly weighted, as if the very earth conspired to hold me back, reminding me of all I had to lose. "Stay back!" I shouted toward the boy, panic gripping my chest. I could see his eyes widen in shock and fear, the innocence shining in them serving as a cruel contrast against the dark horrors surrounding us. My opponent's silhouette grew larger, looming over him, an embodiment of the vengeance I had sought to escape. Do you dare to abandon your own? The hooded figure sneered, their voice dripping with venom. You fight for the weak, you will perish with them. No! I cried out, drawing upon every last reserve of strength. I felt an energy surging within, something organic and raw. It was not merely the overarching fear for the boy, it was anger, sorrow, and hope intertwined. A tide of desperate emotion flooded me, pushing back the shadows that threatened to swallow us whole. I fight for a future where no one is engulfed by this cycle of violence. In that moment, the arena shook with the cries of combat. I lunged in front of the boy just as the enemy slashed forward. My blade met theirs with a clang that sent a jolt through my body. The impact rattled me down to the core, but I stood my ground, the determination to protect the boy igniting an indomitable fire within me. Pushing aside the radiant pain, I restored my stance, gazing down into the boy's terrified eyes. "I will not let you be taken from me too," I whispered, my heart breaking at the vulnerability captured in his gaze. A flicker of understanding seemed to pass between us, and even though the din of war continued to roar around us, I felt time still, if only for a moment. The boy nodded, a silent promise of trust reaffirmed between us. With each passing second, the battle around us dissipated into a haze, consumed by my singular focus. I turned once again to my opponent, their hood stirred in the cruel wind of the storm that raged around us like the storm within my heart. "Is this what vengeance has made you?" I pleaded. "Is this fury worth the innocent lives lost? The generations that will never know peace?" For a heartbeat, their grip faltered, they seemed to wrestle with memories I once shared with them, fragile flashes of laughter lost in the recesses of time. But then they hardened, reclaiming the anger that fueled their fire. "The innocent will be swept aside if the strong do not rise. And you are nothing but a foolish dreamer, bound to crash." Just as our blades struck once more, my mind raced, weighing the desperation against the sliver of hope this moment could unite us in a greater cause. I could feel the pulsing energy surrounding meth warmth of my allies stirring, emboldened by my stand. It was infectious. The gleam of their swords lent light to a path I had once believed obscured forever. Take my hand. I shouted, and with that, I extended my free hand, knowing that only together could we bridge the chasm forged by years of resentment. We can reshape this world together. End this loss. In an instant, something shifted, a flicker of vulnerability flashed across the hooded figure's eyes. They hesitated, but the moment felt fleeting, and their expression morphed back into a mask of hatred. Hope. It only brings destruction. You'll regret this folly. The weight of their words slammed against the barrier of my resolve, but then strangely amid this battlefield, between the chaos of swords clashing and desperate cries, I sensed a ripple of unexpected kindness. A neighboring fighter, one I had fought beside but hardly knew, surged forward. Their blade sliced through the darkness that loomed closer, a fierce defense against the malevolence that had grown too strong, and as steel met steel yet again, an unexpected thought emerged just as the boy had hoped. Maybe there were others who wished to carve out their own destinies, alongside us. Perhaps in the very act of standing resiliently in the storm, there lay an unforeseen strength, but beneath it all, a new fear twisted through meth idea that allies may also fall. With every heartbeat, the tendrils of doubt began to coil around me, sharp and invasive. Even as the tide began to shift, the shadows never truly dissipated. As I blocked the next strike, my resolve faltered when something caught my eye. Amid the turmoil, a familiar figure emerged from the fringe of the crowd, cloaked against the storm, a figure I once thought long gone. Their presence threw the ground beneath my feet into tremors, and for a brief, paralyzing moment, I dropped my guard as recognition washed over me. Lyra? I whispered, the name escaping my lips before I could recall the danger surrounding us. The world around me transformed into a whirlwind of confusion, time suspended as the realization hit me. A bond, one thought severed, shattered back, and with it, emotions surged through me, fierce and uncontrollable. In that split second, certainty collapsed around me like a house of cards, and I was forced to confront the impossible truth of her return. The memories I had buried rose up again, as tumultuous as the fight still raging before us. What would this reunion cost? The clang of swords echoed through the chaotic battlefield, their piercing sounds woven into a symphony of war. But amongst the cacophony, Lyra's name lingered in the air like an uninvited spectre, beckoning my heart to recognize the profound depth of its significance. I had feared that this moment would never come, that her whispers among the leaves and the distant laughter shared in sunlit glades had been lost forever. Lyra. I stammered breathlessly, hope and doubt mingling in my chest, battling for supremacy. I barely registered the strikes against my guard. The urgency of her presence rendered everything else insignificant. But she was not the only thing resuming its place within me. Memories of our time together surged forth, laughter shared over campfires, promises made beneath starlit skies, and her unwavering belief that we could forge a destiny beyond the reach of our enemies. Yet, now a reality I had never wanted to acknowledge faced me. A thousand fears emerged from the shadows, whispering warnings against the emotional whirlwind I was entering. She caught my gaze, her eyes searching mine with an intensity that transcended the tumult around us. Get out of here! She shouted, cutting through the din, her voice as sharp and fierce as the blade she wielded. This isn't your fight, but you, I began, my voice catching in my throat. I thought you were. I was. I am not now. Her face softened momentarily, yet her brow furrowed with urgency. You don't belong here, fighting this battle. It's too late for me, but it's not for you. As she deflected an incoming strike from a nearby enemy, the ease with which she maneuvered through the chaos sent chills down my spine. Lyra may have been alive, but the ferocity in her actions told a harrowing story of survival that I could scarcely comprehend. Was this the woman I had loved? How had we ended up in such a dark place? The fissure of time had carved its way deep into our shared narrative, and with each exchanged blow, I wondered if time could ever bridge the gap we had allowed to grow. But before I could muster further thoughts, the hooded figure had caught onto our distraction, and with a swift motion, they lunged toward Lyra. My instincts erupted into action before reason could catch up, and I barreled towards her, desperation propelling me forward. "Lyra, watch out!" I yelled, but the world slowed into shadows as if time itself had decided to prolong my agony. Before I could reach her, she turned at the last possible moment and met the strike with her own blade, a fierce determination coursing through her. The impact sent a tremor through the ground, and she grunted in effort, but still, she stood like a guardian, defiant and intimidating. "You have no power here," she cried, and for an instant, it felt like the fabric of reality twisted as her fierce spirit electrified the air around us. I was drawn in, the storm within me stabilizing in the wake of her boldness. "Together," I urged, realizing our shared strength was the key as I positioned myself beside her. "We cannot," she interrupted, her face hardening, swallowing the bond of hope I tried to extend. "You're still fighting for an ideal." "I'm fighting to survive. I won't let this moment be the death of you, too." Her words hit like arrows, piercing through the vestiges of our shared history. I felt the weight of her truth. I was here for something greater, and she was back in the fray for reasons far heavier than mine. The pang of loss loomed around us like a oppressive shroud, the realization that we may have become too entangled in our struggles to find our way back to each other. But just as despair threatened to encroach, the world broke in around us, roaring with unfamiliar sounds rising from the shadows. A flicker of kindness emerged yet again. Me allies, those I had fought alongside, had rallied, and I saw faces I hadn't expected, a hunter who once saved me from poison, a healer who had stitched my wounds, and a scholar who had whispered ancient secrets of courage. "Together," they shouted, a chorus igniting behind us. An exhilarating spark ignited within me. The tiniest glimmer of hope expanding into something overwhelming. But with newfound resolve came the weight of uncertainty. Lyra's gaze caught mine once more, a storm brewing therein, yet flashing with the tiniest ember of shared purpose. "We fight now," she said softly, her voice nearly drowned out by the roaring wind. "But we can't lose ourselves in this battle. We shall not lose each other. Promise me." That I opened my mouth, ready to give her my word, but before I could, the ground beneath us trembled violently, and a figure cloaked in shadow, a larger, more grotesque presence emerged from the chaos, towering above us all. Everything around us faded, the clamor of battle dimmed into echoes of whispers. The air turned electric with the promise of confrontation. My heart pounded rhythmically with rising dread. Facing the enormity before us, we both understood that a renewed fight was upon us, but the cost of this new battle could very well seal our fates in ways we could not begin to comprehend. Shattered pieces of a long-gone story clattered against the backdrop of uncertainty. Could we claim the courage and resilience to be remade, or would we be swept away into lost dreams and memories forever beyond our reach? Grasping Lyra's hand tightly, I felt the gravity of our shared promise. It was thrust into the storm ahead of us as we prepared to confront the darkness looming before us. And as the shadows threatened once more, I wheeled back to Lyra, the unspoken truth lingering heavily between us. No matter the outcome, the stakes had never been higher, and I was left to ponder the haunting question: would we emerge from the horrors of today, or would this battle expose an irrevocable divide within our hearts? The world melted into a blur of chaos as my hand remained intertwined with Lyra's, a fragile yet unyielding connection amid the cacophony of war. The monstrous figure that towered before us pulsed with a dark, chilling energy, an embodiment of fear and the unknown. Every muscle in my body tensed, instinct screamed for us to run, to retreat from what loomed ahead, but the fire in Lyra's eyes anchored me. For her, there was no turning back; for me, a choice had to be made. "Stay close," I whispered, drawing courage from the strength in her presence. As Lyra nodded, grit replaced uncertainty. Her stance solidified into one of resolve. Whatever had transformed her, whatever darkness had coiled around her like a snake, I was determined to uncover it, to fight alongside her against our fragmented past. The figure stepped forward, a swirl of tendrils of shadow snaking around it, reaching out like grasping hands, the embodiment of every fear we had faced and every wound we had suffered. It pulsed with hatred and malice, and an ancient voice echoed from within, dark and thunderous. "You dare to fight against me? You are nothing but ghosts of a dead past." A ripple of anger cascaded through me, igniting a bravery I hadn't known existed. "We are not ghosts," I shouted back, my voice rising above the storm. We are the memories that shape us. And we will not let you consume us. Lyra stepped forward, an otherworldly fierceness commanding the air around us. Your darkness will never extinguish our light, she cried, her words like steel slicing through the thick tension. As our allies surged up beside us, a wave of resilience buoyed by shared determination spread like wildfire through the ranks, the shadow being sneered, casting its terrible gaze upon the gathering strength of our collective spirit. Bravery? Cunning? They matter little against true despair. It lifted a hand, and shadows morphed into sharp tendrils that lashed toward us, each one a whisper of our hidden fears, threatening to draw us into an abyss of hopelessness. But before the darkness could reach us, Lyra flicked her blade with precision, slicing through a shadow as though it was made of mere smoke. Together! She yelled, her spirit igniting courage in everyone around her, fueling our resolve against the treachery of the shadow. We echoed her words, the chorus rising like a flaming beacon of unity and defiance that spiraled into the heart of the darkness. Energy surged as we struck together, forming a wall against the shadows that threatened to collapse us. Each swing of our weapons, each display of fierce intention, unraveled memories that had been chained in our past, breathing life into the courage we never knew we had. Yet even amid this battle, the weight of Lyra's earlier words haunted me. The promise I had intended to make lingered heavily in the air, unsaid and yet felt profoundly. I wanted to pull her aside, to speak aloud the fears that clawed at me, but the moment was not ours to seize. Focusing on the battle required all our energy, the very essence of our survival depended on it. With each clashing moment, each step forward against the encroaching shadows, a faint whisper of hope blossomed in the chasms of dread. Faces of comrades shone with defiance, courage igniting throughout our ranks. Bold gestures of kindness emerged as those with lesser wounds stepped up, sharing their strength. A healer swiftly bound the injuries of a comrade who had faltered, a soldier condoled one who faced the inevitable, providing solace amidst the chaos. Yet, the shadows were relentless and adaptive, revealing other forms of darkness within us. Unresolved anguish began to fester, and I caught glimpses of fear in Lyra's eyes every time a blade clashed too close, or shadows slithered too near. The barriers we had erected began to crumble, and sudden glances would intertwine our shared memories, echoes of laughter dissolving into silence, the warmth of soft promises fading into regret. Lyra! I shouted, dodging a lash of shadow intended for her, my heart clenching as I managed to deflect it, skill forgotten. In the wake of worry. We have to end this now. I refuse to lose you again. In that moment, her eyes had searched mine deeply, igniting the courage to bridge that chasm between us. Together, she reaffirmed, her voice trembling in the ear-shattering chaos while grasping my arm, the pulse of her unease bleeding through. Yet, before I could respond, the grotesque figure laughed, shrugging off our burgeoning resolve. You think you can change the past? You think light can survive in shadows? Its voice echoed ominously, and in an exhalation of darkness, it released a wave of chilling dread, a manifestation of our fears in the form of ghostly visages, slithering through the battlefield, specters of loss, of dreams untethered, of choices made and unmade. Amidst the swirl of chaos and malevolent whispers, I caught sight of something that froze my heart, a vision of a child, bright-eyed and innocent, standing alone beneath a canopy of trees. The realization clawed at my guts. The child bore an uncanny resemblance to Lyra. I was thrust into a grim image of possibilities, of futures snatched away by the unyielding hand of fate. Lyra! I cried, the truth unearthing itself in the depths of my soul, a thousand questions boiling to the surface. What have you? Focus. She pleaded, yet the molten fear coursing through me drowned out even her voice. The figure laughed menacingly, for it had sensed the fracture. For the first time, I understood. We were not merely battling an external darkness, we were confronting the shadows that haunted our souls, truths that could restore hope or rend us asunder forever. How could I confront this quickly growing tempest, the revelations clawing their way into the daylight? As the figure prepared to strike, it brandished its shadowed hand toward us, darkness pooling ominously, threatening to engulf Lyra in its insidious embrace. In that fateful second, I had but one choice: to stand in the way of the shadows. And as I stepped forward, a realization surged like a breathtaking wave. Whatever revelations lay ahead, whatever future unfolded, I would protect her. Fate be damned, stay strong. I shouted, bracing to face the oncoming tide. But amidst the battle, as despair loomed larger than ever and the darkness closed in, what would it cost me to hold on to the light that had once illuminated our paths? In the relentless grip of fate, even in this moment of impending dread, I was left to wonder if the shadows would consume everything we held dear, or could we wrestle our truth back from the brink, together? The world around me seemed to splinter into a chorus of chaos and uncertainty, each breath a struggle against the rising tide of despair. As the shadows loomed closer, their cold tendrils reaching for Lyra, my heart ached with the intensity of 1,000 memories bitter and sweet. Each flicker of hope I clung to was a reminder of the love that had been our foundation and the heartache that had since twisted it into something unrecognizable. In that desperate moment, as I braced myself to shield her from the oncoming darkness, another piece of the truth struck me, a clarity rippling through my veins. Perhaps it wasn't just about fighting against the shadows external to us, but confronting those within. The specters surrounding us were us, the choices we'd made, the silence of our pasts, and the shadow of love unspoken. For deep within me, I knew that amidst this chaos, the most poignant battles waged were often within our hearts. Lyra. I called out again, my voice trembling yet resolute. You don't have to carry this burden alone. We can face this together. My resolve surged into something more, a vibrant beacon forging its way through the tendrils of despair. I met her gaze, those deep eyes of hers reflecting a tempesta mix of fear, determination, and confusion. The moment stretched, pacing against the rhythm of the storm, and in those fragments of time, I dared hope she heard my silent plea. Let my heart be your anchor, please, let me in, I begged, engulfed by the weight of everything left unsaid, a rekindled fire urging me forward. We have fought too hard to lose each other again. The recognition flickered in her eyes, a sight that consumed me, and I saw the shadows around us shift, if only slightly, as if they were testing the tether between our hearts. With a fierce, beautiful determination, Lyra stepped closer, her voice steady despite the mounting chaos. You're right. We can't let this darkness split us apart. Together, we can illuminate the path forward. I felt the tether between us weave tighter. It was no longer just faith but understanding in those simple, spoken words that ignited the heart of our connection. The monstrous figure before us recoiled, its sneer transforming into concern as we drew strength from one another. What is this? It hissed, shadows faltering against the luminosity kindled by our union. To our sides, our allies gathered, emboldened by our commitment to each other, forming a tangible wall of resistance against despair. We stand for love, not fear. I shouted, and in unison, those I fought alongside raised their weapons, filling the air with a fierce roar of defiance, a sound that reverberated with the echoes of 1,000 battles fought not just in the outside world, but within our souls. We would not succumb. Driven by raw faith, we lashed out in tandem, allies striking alongside comrades, wrapped tightly in each other's resolve. Lyra carved through the shadows with a fierce, burning brilliance, my sword synchronized with hers, a harmonious dance that shattered the darkness engulfing us. Each clash of steel resonated with clarity and purpose. We were not just warriors together, we could rewrite our story. The figure faltered, confusion evident in its shifting tendrils, the darkness around it swirling in a frenzied, desperate turmoil. No. You think this can defeat me? I am the embodiment of your pain. It wailed, but even as it spoke, I felt its grip weakening. No, we retorted in unison, a phrase that echoed in a rejuvenated chorus. You are our past, but you are not our future. With each word spoken, the shadows flickered violently, desperately trying to withstand the weight of light raging against them. The darkness seemed to pulse, gathering its strength, ready to launch one final, desperate strike. When the attack came, it surged forward as a wave, clashing against the luminescence we had conjured. No more shadows. Lyra's voice rang out above the chaos. This ends now. My heart surged as I realized what had to be done. This darkness had thrived on our hesitations, our scarce it grew stronger as long as we let it. I Raised my weapon high and felt every ounce of pain transformed into a beacon of power deep in my core. For those we have lost, for those who stand with us, for love that has the power to heal. I shouted. As we thrust our weapons forward, the energy erupted around us, whites and golds blending into a light so brilliant it banished the shadows with one final, cascading wave of strength. A pulse of warmth flooded through the arena, illuminating every face alongside us. They were a tapestry of reminders, warriors forged from every ounce of courage that we had shared. The figure wailed as it collided against our united force, shattering into fragments of memories, images of all we had lost, of choices never made, but as they splintered into countless shards, they became something anew, lessons of love, forgiveness, and strength. The shadows shrank away, unable to withstand the light we had created. Even the remnants of pain couldn't withstand the force of our united hearts, and at that moment of undeniable truth, I turned to Lyra, our laughter bursting forth amidst the silence. "We did it," I whispered, breathless and alive, as we watched the echoes of shadows fade into nothingness. Her expression was a luminous glow, a mixture of laughter and tears, and I knew at that moment that all the lost paths, all the struggles, led us here together. "I've missed you," she breathed, her hand finding mine in a bond that spoke volumes where words failed. In the heart of the chaos, we were reclaimed under the radiant embrace of warmth. The shadows had fled, leaving the remnants of our past but embracing the potential for a shared future. Somehow, we had woven our broken pieces into something luminous, an enduring promise that darkness could never consume. As the sun broke through the remnants of twilight, bathing the arena in the warmth of dawn, a single thought echoed in my heart: we are not defined by our pasts, but by the stories we choose to write together. And in that moment, I grasped the truth, as I watched the first rays of light dance around us. Shadows may linger, but we have the power to shape our destinies anew, intertwined in light, love, and the freedom of acceptance.